Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining our webinar entitled Expanding Possibilities, Investment Residency in New Zealand. My name is Whit Batchelor. I am an Executive Vice President at Whittier Trust. I've been with Whittier for about 15 years, had the privilege of working with many families in their wealth management and sort of succession planning journeys. So I'm really thrilled today to have a fantastic group of panelists to speak to us on the topic of investment residency in New Zealand. This is sort of a place that's sort of near and dear to my heart and something of high interest to a lot of families. I've been fielding many questions over the years from families exploring residency abroad, residency and citizenship, both in the EU, New Zealand, and other cituses that we're all sort of familiar with. And I guess one of the things I wanted to address is sort of why New Zealand and why today. And the bottom line is that there's a lot of things to consider when thinking about optionality when it comes to place of residency, not dissimilar from thoughts around asset location when we're talking about things like irrevocable trusts and corporate entities and partnerships. We have a lot of families that explore, whether it's a Delaware trust or a Nevada trust or South Dakota trust. And there's a lot of considerations that go through the planning of asset location. And when I think about residency, the same sort of thoughts and processes come to mind. You want somewhere that's comfortable, stable, familiar. From a communication and interaction standpoint, you want something that is close by. So for example, if you're a West Coast person in the United States and you're looking at setting up a domestic, non-California trust, you might think Nevada is 1 hour time difference, whereas Delaware is a 3-hour time difference. So as I think about partnering on a residency program with a foreign country, New Zealand is a 5 hours of overlap in the business day, whereas you might be lucky to get 1 hour of overlap in the business day in the EU. Travel-wise, I think a direct flight to New Zealand is, in the neighborhood of 12 to 14 hours, which is about what it takes you to fly directly to most parts of continental Europe. Although, a lot of the foreign residency locations in Europe do not offer direct flights from San Francisco or LA or the Western US. So you'd be connecting somewhere. So a couple other standouts for me when it comes to New Zealand that I think many people find appealing and lean in when they think about it as a place of residence. First, it's ranked the third safest country in the world. The leading countries kind of up there with northern Scandinavian countries, but very safe, ranked by the Global Peace Index. It's 2% of the world's fresh water, believe it or not. So, whereas a lot of folks think about drought and water stability as something that comes to mind in this growing world, New Zealand has plentiful, abundant fresh water and not an issue. Food self-sufficiency. So again, we think a lot about where our global food stock comes from. Big issues in COVID around food stability and pricing. And New Zealand is very fortunate to be very high in food self-sufficiency. One of the leading healthcare systems globally, top 5 healthcare system in the world, New Zealand. So if you're thinking about being in a place where health needs are a current or growing concern, being in a place that's got a top of the line healthcare system is really important. One of the top education systems in the world is located in New Zealand. New Zealand has about 88% of its electricity comes from renewable sources, which will be 100% here in the next, call it 10 to 15 years. It's got one of the top 5 strongest passports for traveling, for its citizens globally. And it consistently ranks number 1 on the world index for work-life balance. So I think that speaks to culture. And I think when you hear from our panelists today, you're going to learn a little bit about why that's sort of an ethos in New Zealand. So we have three kind of areas of expertise that are going to be sort of addressed today. Our first speakers are going to be Mike Dawson and Phil Borman from Adventure On. They're going to speak to sort of lifestyle and location elements and considerations in New Zealand. We're going to have Tom Zhou, he's a senior advisor with Malcolm Pacific, who's a specialist in sort of the immigration process to New Zealand. And we're going to hear from Hannah Donaldson with JD Ware, who is the largest wealth management firm. We'll speak a bit to the investment requirements and optionalities within the global visa. So we'll start with Phil and Mike.
Awesome. So thanks for the intro, Whit, and a big hi to everybody from down here in New Zealand. It's a real privilege to be speaking with everybody in the Whittier Trust community. We're Adventure On. We specialize in bespoke adventure travel down here in New Zealand, but also lifestyle management for discerning guests who want to come from overseas and check out either a vacation in New Zealand or life in New Zealand in general. We actually just hosted or recently hosted Whit and his wife Erin down here in New Zealand in August, and we had an amazing week traveling around the North Island and South Island, and it was a good reminder for Mike and myself to get back out on the road again here in New Zealand, and it was a reminder of why our country resonates so strongly with people, particularly from the United States, because I know we're a bit biased down here, but we consider it our life down here to be second to none. So, yeah, I think I'll hand it over to Mike, and I think Mike, you'll do a run through of what to expect today and what we're going to outline.
Kia ora, everybody. I'm Mike, also from Adventure On. Today's just the opportunity to share New Zealand with you all, share what makes our country so special in our little corner of the world, and I guess maybe shed a bit of light on why we're seeing such a big increase in demand for the investor pathway into New Zealand, especially for those that are kind of looking for a more lifestyle-driven destination. And as Phil Whit both mentioned, that offers that security, well-being, freedom, and the high quality of life. So today we'll just chat through a few things, life in New Zealand, what it's like to live down here, run through why we're ranked so high in the work-life balance, what's important to Kiwis and keeping us happy, and what you can expect. The security situation in New Zealand, or lack of security situation, it's a very safe place. And the climate, the education system, something we get a lot of interest in around how the New Zealand education system operates, and a few other things. And we'll wrap up, we'll give a bit of an overview of the different regions for those that haven't been down to New Zealand, the main centres, and a bit about Kiwi culture, what Kiwis love to do, what Kiwis are about, and what you can expect. So with that, we'll dive in to the quality of life, which I guess is what really makes New Zealand so special. New Zealand is a unique country, and it's unparalleled in the blend of diversity we have of these incredible natural areas, towering mountains, pristine beaches, and it's incredible how close these places are to the urban areas, which just means that everyone can access these incredible spots and access that nature that's valued by the country. It's protected by the country, and it's largely untouched, and it's open to everyone. The quality of life is also, built up a lot around how safe and stable New Zealand is in terms of a country. We're probably one of the safest as they come globally. Our communities are so well cared for in terms of our universal healthcare system that's accessible and free for everyone. and that education system Whit was mentioning earlier, that is world class, ranking really high globally. What we see that people love when they come down here and experience New Zealand is all about the lifestyle, and how New Zealanders typically enjoy a really low stress lifestyle set against that backdrop of those pristine places. Just getting out, having fun, and making sure work-life balance is really, really front of mind. Because it is a country, it is a place that you can work productively with all the modern conveniences, live in an urban area, but just be on a gateway to the backcountry, gateway to nature, gateway to those special places that there are fewer and fewer of in the world. And I guess probably a common narrative we get often is that living or visiting New Zealand is a way to get your time back. It gives you a lot of time back. You get this deep, richly connected lifestyle. So I'll hand it back to Phil. He can talk more about that life balance, about the culture.
Yeah, so one of the things that a lot of people notice about New Zealand when they first start researching things is like our population. So New Zealand has a population of just over 5.5 million people. So I think that's fewer than most US states. Land area wise, I think it's about 1/7 the size of California. But I think geographically it's a little bit more aligned or a bit more comparable. So New Zealand would fit in is about 2/3 the size of California. One way to put it, I guess, is New Zealand is an amazing canvas for this sort of work-life balance that we sort of like to talk about, because of our geography or our geographical makeup and our climatic zones and our low population. It really does. It has paved the way for quite a unique culture and lifestyle in the global space. So it basically means we have less crowding. We have generally very short commutes. And generally just sort of more space to breathe to achieve that sort of lifestyle balance. New Zealanders also typically we value relationships very highly, our social and our professional relationships really highly. We place a very high value on leisure over work time. That's not to say we're not hard workers. New Zealanders are very hard workers, but there's very much a culture in New Zealand of sort of life first, or we sort of work to live as opposed to sort of live to work. So with that as well, we've nurtured a very strong outdoors culture. We're very blessed to have like wilderness areas right on our doorstep. Pretty much no matter where you live in New Zealand, you are not far from a wilderness area where you're able to recreate, whether that's places in the mountains, coastal areas, or rural farm areas. These areas are accessible to us immediately, like whether it's from a big city like Auckland or Wellington, or from some of those smaller towns. So these parts of our culture are really key in New Zealand, and what kind of ties all that together is Māori is the native language of New Zealand, is a sense, there's a word called manaakitanga, and it's best defined by a concept of sort of generosity, kindness, and looking after each other. And that's what ties together as our sort of general culture in New Zealand, this sort of sense of mutual care and extending respect and compassion towards one another. But just quickly going back to the sort of lifestyle around things, for example, in a place like Queenstown, for example, you can go skiing in the morning in the winter, and this is where our temperate climate really lends itself well to us. You can go skiing in the morning, and then in the afternoon, hit the golf course, which is just down the road from the ski area, which is well below the snow line, and play a round of golf in a pair of t-shirt and shorts if you really wanted to. So yeah, that's sort of a very big sort of broad overview of sort of lifestyle and how we view the ideal lifestyle in New Zealand. But a key part of that is climate, which I think Mike's going to speak to now.
Yeah, exactly. I think New Zealand's really unique in the way that we are an archipelago at the bottom of the Pacific, which means we do have this incredibly temperate climate. So I live up north. I actually live just in the backdrop of this picture, in a small town called Mount Maunganui, a coastal town. And it's not uncommon while you might be down in Queenstown skiing turns, just a really short geographic distance in the heart of winter, you'll get a day like this and wake up on sunrise, a quick jog or a walk around the mount, a really small community. We have a local coffee roaster, sit on the beach, enjoy a coffee before cracking in to work after that. So the town itself is a bit of an incubator for some amazing tech projects, some other great enterprise. So easy place to work and get that balance. And then of course after work, quick walk down to the beach for a swim. And even in winter, it's still relatively temperate, or a surf. And Whit mentioned it earlier that we do have this incredibly amazing thing where a lot of our food in New Zealand is locally produced. So it's always great in the evening to work up a meal with some mates and know that your food's coming locally, that it's good quality, it's organic, all those kind of things. Yeah, so that gives a little bit of a picture of what it's like to live a day in New Zealand.
Yeah, that's right. I think Whit alluded, he briefly touched on how New Zealand is a very safe country, which is, that is correct. I think New Zealand, I think he mentioned it already, it's ranked as one of the safest countries in the world. It is a place where, kids can walk to school. For example, I'm not suggesting this to everybody, but like I can't remember the last time I locked my house when I went out for the day. I think he mentioned the Global Peace Index. New Zealand is actually ranked number 3, as he mentioned. I think it's just behind Ireland and Iceland, I believe. And that is actually measured by the level of societal safety and security, the extent of ongoing and domestic and international conflict, and the degree of militarization. So, there's always a very safe feeling here in New Zealand. It's never sort of top of mind about your personal or public safety. So we do have a very low crime rate, and our police force is both highly respected, unmilitarized, and highly trusted. And there is a mandate in New Zealand for our police force to be community focused first, above all. And then lastly, Whit did touch on our health system. We have a bit of a hybrid model here in New Zealand. We have a very good public health system, but there is also a private health sector as well. And the two of those sectors actually do work very well together. And our private health system and our insurance down here is both. It's very swift moving, but also very affordable as well. New Zealand is, in general, it's seen, it is perceived, and it is real. It is basically a safe and secure place to live. And we have a great education system as well, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, we get a lot of questions about our education system, and Whit did allude to it, particularly by those, younger families, kids that are still working through school, if they're looking to make the move down. And it's a great question. It is a really important one because education is so important. And New Zealand's schooling system does rank as one of the best in the world. It does bring together a few different models. So we have a state school system, which is free and accessible to everyone. We have a private school system, largely the same, just with a cost associated to that. And then we have international IB type accredited schools as well. Once you finish school and move on to university, we have globally recognized universities that are ranked really highly. And I think New Zealand does provide, particularly at the younger school years, it brings together this strong emphasis on creativity, just with the space to breathe. It also combines outdoors with schooling, which gives such great lessons to our next generations. And it's just a fantastic opportunity to be educated in an amazing place with focus on sport, focus on community, a lot of different things that go into building the next generation of our kids. We thought it would be really timely today to give a bit of a regional showcase around what New Zealand actually is like. Take a quick tour of some of the destinations. I'm sure most people on the call know we've got two main islands, but New Zealand's made up of 600 islands. The majority of the population live on the north or the South Island of New Zealand. We have over 15,000 k's of coastline, which 10,000 miles. So you're never more than about 80 miles from the beach. And we thought today we'd just focus in on 4 distinct regions, the main one being Auckland, the largest city of New Zealand.
Yep, that's right. So Auckland it's our international gateway. I think what mentioned earlier about flights to New Zealand. For example, if you're on the West Coast and you're flying into New Zealand, most flights will land in Auckland. It's our international gateway, and it's basically, for example, from LA, it's an overnight flight. You leave LA at about 8:30 in the evening. You land in New Zealand about 5:30 in the morning. So you go to sleep on the plane, you wake up, you're in New Zealand. So you land in Auckland. Auckland is our largest city. There's 1.7 million people there, which is obviously relatively small on the global scale. But it is funny because a lot of New Zealanders who don't live in Auckland see Auckland as like the big city, but globally it's quite small. But it's set on the Hauraki Gulf. It's in a stunning location. There's been a few America's Cups that have been hosted there. And it has the big city feel, but again, it's one of those places where you can be out of the city in 15 minutes and on beautiful beaches to go surfing, fishing, sailing, yachting, you name it. It's our financial and commercial hub as well. It's home to top international schools, luxury suburbs, and again, our busiest airport. So, Auckland's a good big city option. If we head further south to Queenstown, Queenstown is known as the adventure capital of the world. It's very different from Auckland in the sense that it is much smaller and it's set right in the heart of the Southern Alps. It is home to amazing wineries. It's right on the doorstep of many national parks and wilderness areas that are no more than sort of 10 minutes drive to get into. And it's also home to a lot of some tech startups who have moved to Queenstown because they're seeing it as a great place because it does draw talented people because people do want to move there for the lifestyle. So in essence, it's a lifestyle paradise.
And right across the hill from Queenstown, we've got Wanaka. It's very similar. It's very spectacular. It's a little bit quieter than Queenstown, more community focused, incredible properties, all built around a township like Wanaka, which has an incredible outlook into Mount Aspiring National Park. So plenty of options down south. And then I just want to draw your attention to the Bay of Islands, which is in the far north. This is one of the most incredible parts of the country. It kind of is the windless north. It's a little bit unknown. A lot of islands, very, very temperate climate, maritime climate, and an incredible place to live with really amazing properties sitting along the beach, gazing out onto the Bay of Islands. But what makes this area so attractive for our international clientele is its proximity to Auckland, which is New Zealand's gateway. So coming in off an international flight, be that from LA, you can walk across to the helipad and it's a very short commute up to the Bay of Islands, or jump in a car and it's less than 3 hours to get up to that area. And then I'll hand it back to Phil, and there we go,
Yeah.
Phil, Mount Taranaki.
Yeah, so I might just sort of wrap up this little section. Obviously, we've sort of done a broad brush over what life in New Zealand is like. But just a few final wee points. New Zealand, we speak English in New Zealand, but an official language of New Zealand is also Maori, but life in general is conducted in English. Also, it's noteworthy that we're quite an innovative country. We're known for our sense of what's called number 8 wire mentality, which is basically our entrepreneurship is dictated by finding simple solutions and unorthodox solutions to like sort of lifestyle and business problems. So you might have heard of companies like Rocket Lab, Allbirds, and Xero. They're all companies founded in New Zealand and quite heavy hitters on the global stage. So we do pride ourselves on being quite innovative. New Zealanders also, we're very welcoming to outsiders. We're a very egalitarian country, and we pride ourselves on being like a safe and well-connected country with very modern infrastructure. We have a very stable currency and a very stable government. We have a parliamentary system, and so we consider ourselves to be a very stable democracy. And lastly, we really do, again, we pride ourselves on our conservation efforts in New Zealand. It is always top of mind with us that we have something very special here and we like to preserve what we have. So yeah, New Zealand offers a lifestyle. Obviously we're biased, but it is a lifestyle that we think is pretty hard to match. So yeah, I think with that we will be handing it over to Tom, I believe. There we go.
Kia ora, everyone. So my name is Tom, and I'm a senior advisor with a specialist immigration firm, Malcolm Pacific Immigration. So I'm here today to give you an overview of New Zealand's Golden Visa program called the Active Investor Plus, along with an overview of the process to purchasing a home in New Zealand. While many countries around the world are closing their golden visa pathways, New Zealand is very much open for business and encourages foreign investment. So the Active Investor Plus visa is designed to attract people who want to secure permanent residence in New Zealand and are prepared to invest into the New Zealand economy, bringing their talents, ideas, and international connections to our country. So previous iterations of this policy have existed since 2009, and Malcolm Pacific's clients alone have invested a combined total of over 15 billion. And this new policy opened in April this year and has been very popular, with committed capital of over 2.1 billion so far, and almost half of all applicants are coming from the US, so strong interest from there. Migrant investors have contributed billions of dollars into the New Zealand economy and are part of our business, innovation, science, education, and local communities. So you will be made to feel welcome and part of the strong migrant investor ecosystem. So this new Active Investor Plus policy introduces two simplified categories called the growth category and the balance category. You'll see some key differences between these two. Firstly, in the investment amount. So under the growth, you have a 5 million NZD investment, and under balanced, you have a 10 million NZD investment. So that's equivalent to around 3 million USD and 6 million USD. There's also a difference in the type of investments you can make. So growth is all about New Zealand private equity, whereas the balance category adds options for you to invest into New Zealand equities, philanthropy, some property development, and government bonds. We also have differences in the required length of the investment and how much time you need to spend in New Zealand during that investment period. Some of the key features of this program include one, that the residence visa is granted straight away when the investments are completed. That will give you access to New Zealand's publicly funded healthcare system, and your children can go to school here as domestic students. The presence in New Zealand requirements have also been significantly reduced from previous versions of this policy, especially under the growth category. So that makes the growth category very attractive to people who want permanent residence but don't want to settle straight away. There's no age limit or English requirement for this category. And it's important to note that obtaining New Zealand residency is not the same as becoming a tax resident in New Zealand. So if you don't plan on spending much time in New Zealand, it's possible to avoid becoming a tax resident here. Of course, we do recommend you take tax advice if this is of any concern. You can also include partners and dependent children under the age of 25 in this residence application. Sorry about that, guys. I seem to have just disconnected there. All right. So the growth category allows great flexibility at a lower investment amount of that 5 million New Zealand dollars for a period of 3 years. So only the main applicant needs to spend 21 days in New Zealand during the 3-year investment period. And this can be across any number of trips. So it could be a week holiday each year or just one 3-week trip. The trade-off is that you can only invest in managed funds and direct investments, all relating to New Zealand's private equity market. So these investments are all approved through Invest New Zealand, which is the government agency responsible for the AIP program, but they are not government guaranteed. So you do need to do your own due diligence or have a wealth advisor assist. You're also able to diversify and invest into any number of approved funds or direct investments, as long as you meet the each fund's minimum investment requirements. The balance category has a higher investment requirement of 10 million NZD, or that's 6 million USD, for 5 years, during which the main applicant must spend at least 105 days in New Zealand. It does allow a wider range of investments, so you can invest into additional things like government bonds, equities, and property and philanthropy. And you can also reduce that 105 days requirement by making between 1 to 3 million in additional investments into any of the approved funds or companies under the growth category. So this category is ideal for more passive investors seeking higher liquidity, and also those looking to spend more time in New Zealand. So the typical AIP journey looks a bit like this. You'll start with a free consultation with us to confirm eligibility for you and the family members you're wanting to include in your residence application. From there, we'll provide you instruction on the documentation required and work with you to prepare them, a process which typically takes between 1 to 4 months. Then we'll prepare and finalize the submissions, get your application lodged, and the average processing time with Immigration New Zealand is very quick, given that this is a top priority for the government. So average processing takes about 2 to 3 weeks. And I'm proud to say our firm holds the current record of 2 days. So once Immigration New Zealand is satisfied you've met the requirements, they'll issue you an approval in principle, which then allows you up to a maximum of 12 months to liquidate your nominated funds, transfer them to New Zealand, and complete the required investments. So there's no need to liquidate or transfer any funds to New Zealand until we get this approval. As soon as you've made the required investment, resident visas will then be issued to you and your included family members. And then after this is when that 21 days or 105 days requirement starts. So during your 3-year or 5-year investment period, we'll help you manage 2 audit processes with Immigration New Zealand to ensure that you continue to meet the investment requirements. We'll also be there to help you through this period with any questions, such as, what can you do with the fund distributions, or how you can change investments during this period. Then upon completion of the investment period, we'll apply to secure the permanent resident visas for you and your included family. So these are indefinite visas with no conditions. So you don't need to do anything to maintain them, except transfer them whenever you renew your passport. Also, at this point, the New Zealand government does not require you to keep your funds invested or even in New Zealand. So the key really is that you and your included family members, for them, their permanent resident visas will never lapse, unlike many other countries, and there's no conditions you need to do or meet to continue holding them. Also, apart from the passport, there's actually very few practical differences in New Zealand between holding a permanent residency and citizenship. All right. So a popular question is how to purchase residential property. While there has been a foreign buyer ban in New Zealand since 2017, the government has just announced an upcoming option for holders of the AIP resident visa to purchase a residential property worth 5 million NZD or more, without needing to obtain any kind of special consent. So currently, to purchase a residential home in New Zealand, you need to live in New Zealand for at least 12 months after obtaining residency, or you have to apply for consent through the Overseas Investment Office and then commit to living in New Zealand for 12 months. Whereas under the newly announced regulations, the requirement to live in New Zealand is being removed for applicants who go through this AIP program, as long as you're planning to purchase or build property at or above that 5 million NZD threshold. So we expect these changes to come through in the first quarter of 2026. It's got the support of all the parties in the coalition government, so we're not expecting any significant changes. And this announcement, I think, really demonstrates that the government recognises and welcomes the value investors bring to New Zealand and are willing to make an exception to that foreign buy ban as a result. So the process looks a bit like this. You'll start with applying for residence under the ARP program. Once you've obtained your approval in principle, completed your investment, and obtained your initial resident visa, you can then look to purchase an existing home or land to build your home that costs at least that 5 million NZD. There are, of course, many long-term rental options available in New Zealand if you don't want to go through this route, or if you need something to tide you over until you complete your property purchase. So to sum up a little bit about Malcolm Pacific Immigration, we're celebrating our 40th year anniversary this year with the largest team of licensed advisors in New Zealand. We've got over 70,000 successful clients and an unblemished record in the investor space. So if you have any questions at all or you want to schedule a time to chat, just reach out. All right, and I'll hand you over to our next speaker now.
Thank you, Tom. Look, it's a real pleasure to join you here today. My role in this webinar is to just provide you a bit more colour on the investment opportunity in New Zealand within the context of the active investor plus visa requirements. I'm also going to talk briefly about the economic environment in New Zealand and financial markets, and then just touch on the nature of your due diligence and the opportunities and benefits of having local partnerships. Just to set the scene, JB Ware is the firm where I am a wealth management advisor. We are focused on goals-based investment advice. Our clients include many family trusts, high net worth individuals, charitable and community organisations, and of course, many overseas investors looking to gain residency here in our country. We have over 100 advisors throughout the country and offices, as you can see, dotted across both the North and South Island. Our funds under management are about 30 billion, which clearly may seem quite modest in a global context, but is very significant within the New Zealand market. And this is important in terms of the ability to be relevant and obtain deal flow within the New Zealand context. JB Ware is part of a group called First Cape that also owns Harbour Asset Management, which is a funds management company, and Consilium, which is a platform provider, and together we have 65 billion funds under management and advice, which makes us second only to the New Zealand Superannuation Fund. I've included here a chart that you have seen just a few moments ago when Tom presented, just as a reminder, but also to illustrate where we might fit in your journey, and that is implementation of acceptable investments. So of course, they're within the growth category, focusing on those managed funds, and within the balance category, there is a range of options, listed equities, bonds, in the New Zealand market being typically the most sought after. I'll come back to those in a moment, but just to give you a feel for the New Zealand economy and putting that on a global stage, I'm hoping that most of you on this call will be able to pick here where New Zealand is, and of course to the bottom right there are our North and South Islands. We are significant in terms of GDP per capita, a developed nation, but of course much smaller than Australia and about half the size on this measure when compared to the United States. Our GDP is about 435 billion New Zealand dollars, which is about 280 billion per annum in US dollar terms. In New Zealand, growth has been dominated over time by population gains, and it's quite tricky for you to see, but I'm sure you'll have access to these slides later. The chart to the left shows our GDP growth over time. Over the past 3 years, growth in New Zealand has been quite stagnant. We've been through an economic downturn and our growth rates have been broadly flat compared to better returns in Australia and of course in the US. Our central bank here has responded to this by reducing our policy rates. We have an official cash rate that has been decreased by 2.5% over the past year or so to a current level of 3%. And we anticipate that will be cut again tomorrow and again before the end of the year. So this policy response should provide some stimulus to both our economy and our equity markets short term. In terms of the composition of growth within New Zealand, we are very much dominated by services, so a services-based economy. Also manufacturing and construction are important sectors for us. And the housing market is very dominant in terms of our household wealth, with over 60% of household wealth in New Zealand tied up in residential property. Our key exports are agriculture, tourism, and technology. So this is interesting as these sectors are ones that you'll see when looking at those managed funds Tom was talking to. So our private equity markets in New Zealand cover many different sectors, but there is certainly a flavour for technology and agriculture, as well as other areas such as engineering, logistics, robotics, renewable energy. So it can be very diversified in nature within those private equity markets. Before we talk more about that, though, I did want to cover off the New Zealand listed market. We are small in a global context, as you might imagine. There are 176 listings on the New Zealand Stock Exchange. The market capitalisation of these companies is about 185 billion. So just to put that in some context for you, that is about half the size of the market cap of a company like Uber or McDonald's. We have a market that is dominated by a small number of businesses, and I've included some of those in the right of this slide. So Fisher & Paykel Healthcare is our largest company within the New Zealand Stock Exchange at about 22 billion New Zealand dollars. So that wouldn't even make it into the S&P 500, just to put that in context for you. Mainfreight, Meridian and Auckland Airport are some of our other larger listed companies. In terms of sectors, we would describe our market as relatively defensive. So utilities make up a large chunk of the New Zealand Stock Exchange, and that talks back to that reliance on renewable energy that we have. So a lot of these utilities are large renewable energy generators. Healthcare and industrials are also big sectors, but technology is a very small sector within the New Zealand listed equity market space. We would describe our market as being one that is high dividend. And just to place that in context on the chart to the left, our dividend yields are very strong in a global context. And market beta, which is shown in the right, is very low. So this means that investment in the New Zealand equity market can form a good part of an overall allocation within your wealth strategy, given it does provide diversification and also income generation for your time in New Zealand. So of course, this New Zealand equity market space is relevant primarily for the balanced category that we've been talking to, but also is an option for on-call funds within the growth category. And those are funds that have been committed but not yet called. So typically equities would be a higher risk approach, and you would be more likely to want to invest in bonds for those on-call funds. So I will touch briefly on our bond markets. Bond market I would describe as being small relative to the global context. We have government bonds and corporate bond issues. It's also much shorter duration than other issues throughout the global economy, with the index for the corporate bond market at 3.7 years duration. The yields on our bonds are running around 4% per annum at this point, and the credit quality is fairly good and a reasonable degree of liquidity. So as an investor in the balance category, or for those on-call funds within the growth category, we can invest directly in the bond market or via some form of fund. When looking at acceptable managed funds, and these are primarily here talking to the growth category, but equally are eligible within that balance category. These are, of course, as most of you are very well aware, typically low in terms of liquidity and may require a longer term time commitment than the visa itself requires. The acceptable managed fund list is provided for on the Invest New Zealand website, and there is a large number of funds that are available for investment, covering venture capital, private equity, and private credit markets. Now, as I have touched on, these funds can be, but they're not all, but some of them can be subject to capital calls. And funds that have been committed under the visa but are not yet called are deemed to be on-call funds, and they do have specific investment requirements. That can be a portion in cash, but a portion must also be invested in either bonds or equity. So I've included some examples of acceptable managed funds on this slide, and I would encourage, if you're interested in this visa, just to have a look at the Invest New Zealand website for the broader range of funds. But I did want to highlight, just to provide some colour, one fund, which is Harbour Diversified Private Credit Fund. This fund is of interest to investors who want to participate in the growth category, but are looking within the context of the asset class for a lower relative risk. This is a credit fund as opposed to an equity fund. It has diversification across private credit asset class, monthly dealing liquidity, and approved research. The fund is managed by Harbour Asset Management, and at JB Ware we have exclusive access to this fund should it be of interest. It's an interesting space, the private credit market in New Zealand. It's very much, credit is very much dominated by our four main trading banks. About 7% of all credit comes via the banking sector. So the private credit market is small but growing. The investments are predominantly floating rate and short dated, hence the ability to achieve monthly dealing liquidity. The goal of this fund is to generate a return of 4% plus the official cash rate, which is currently sitting at 3%. So sort of looking at about a 7% return, and on this slide showing returns over time. Now I'm highlighting that this just for your interest, but certainly there is a very broad range of offerings within this managed fund space. on the website. And it would take a high degree of due diligence and consideration of your individual circumstances and your liquidity needs, as well as your interests prior to determining which managed fund might best suit. And of course, you can, as Tom mentioned, invest across a multitude of managed funds within the growth category. And within each, there's typically a degree of diversification. I wanted to just comment on the importance of obtaining a local partnership here in New Zealand when you're considering your investment options. Of course, there are some requirements associated with this visa and the way in which you can invest, but within each category, it's important to consider your individual circumstances. And also, the financial markets are quite small, and local firms can have leverage to different opportunities that may be of interest to you, not only financial, but also within their respective communities. And one further example of this is within the balance category, also an option to commit some of your funds to philanthropic purposes, which many of the local advisory firms may have some ideas or options of consideration. So we'll happily take questions at the right time, but for now, I believe I'm going to be passing back to Adventure On.
Kia ora, Hannah. That's awesome. We'll just bring up the slides. We've got about sort of 7 or 8 minutes just to run through sort of next steps from Adventure On and how we can help. So for a bit of background, Adventure On was founded on the principle of building these exclusive tailor-made experiences. So our team all comes from a background in high performance sport and expedition, leadership, planning, logistics, and everything we do on the ground is around designing something really uniquely for our clients, which we know is so important in this space. We only execute this in New Zealand because that's what we know and that's what we love the most. And we deliver it in style, which is different for everyone, but we work with clients and guests around how we can deliver this in style. And so you might be wondering how that fits with the AIP, with the Active Investor Plus visa. So our specialty in that space is just getting you down here so you can experience New Zealand and really understand what it's like, get your feet on the ground as they say, and experience it in a stress-free, hassle-free kind of way. Our remit is definitely outside Tom's work in the visa application side of things and working through that process with Hannah and her team in terms of the investment stuff. But we're more working around how to set things up on the ground. So I'll hand it off to Phil to talk through what this might look like for you and getting down to New Zealand.
Yeah, that's right. As Mike mentioned, we run it's a exploratory visit program down here in New Zealand. So our work starts with you, obviously, well before you get here, when we just try to understand what you're into, what your sort of lifestyle and professional leanings are. And we work with you, then design a program that essentially gets you down here into New Zealand. It's kind of like I guess you could say it's a sort of a, like a 2 to 3 week test drive of New Zealand life, as it were. We tailor it, as I mentioned, specifically around your investment and lifestyle goals. And then, so once you're here, we look at exploring different regions, and then within that, different property options. So we'll get you around a range of areas and properties and connect you with like our network of very discreet estate agents who have a buyer focus and they'll also give you an understanding of sort of what that market looks like. We can make those, obviously those professional introductions, you know, to the likes of, you know, the guys at Malcolm Pacific, JB Ware, tax advisors. And then we also place a bit of a focus for those who require it on what, you know, what a lot of your family needs and educational needs might be, particularly where, you know, if you have children who are of school age, whether that's in primary school, high school, all the way through to university. We've even had, I think once before, we had a family here and we sort of had the kids go and do a couple of day sort of visit to one of the schools, like spend like a few hours in the classroom. And then obviously, it's not all work, it's also play as well. Obviously, because, you know, lifestyle and play is a focus on why people are interested in coming to New Zealand, either for a visit or to live. So we'll also get into like some of our favorite areas. And that's particularly important as well, because people will often choose like a place to live or a town or a city to live based on their interests, which is centered around a lot of our wilderness areas. You know, that's why, for example, Queenstown or Wanaka are often a focus for some people. Some people who are a bit more focused on coastal living, they might end up in the Bay of Islands, or where Mike and I live in the Bay of Plenty, like in a couple of amazing beach towns here. So we kind of wrap all that up and make sure that we include like a really robust regional immersion so that you can get a feel for each different area and what might fit for you. So I guess a really typical test drive here in New Zealand might be coming into Auckland, having a day or so there, then jumping on a helicopter or even driving up. But most people tend to jump in a short heli, head up to the Winterless North, which is the Bay of Islands, have a few days up there, soaking in that area, and then flying south to the Bay of Plenty area, where there's a really amazing blend of coastal areas with rural, but also it's close to our volcanic zones where there's volcanoes, native forests, and mountains. I guess I like our town in particular. It has a real sort of Santa Cruz sort of vibe to it. And then by contrast, you might then head south to Queenstown and Wanaka, which is on the doorstep of Fiordland National Park, Mount Aspiring National Park, some of the most pristine wilderness zones in the world. Again, we're a little bit biased, but we do consistently hear that from people, like, you know, that our areas are some of the most sort of beautiful parts of the world they've ever experienced. And then of course, obviously within all that, we would wrap in all of the sort of professional and property visits that you might want to do. So that's what a typical sort of regional immersion or test drive of New Zealand might look like. But I think Mike is going to give you just a quick overview of what our sort of end-to-end concierge looks like.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. And just before I do, I just remind there's a Q&A section up on the top right of your screen, I believe. If you want or have any questions, just throw them in there and we'll moderate them and we can answer those in just a second. At Adventure On, we also work around a concierge service because we know, New Zealand, it's a big move. There's a lot to consider when you're looking at these options and coming down to New Zealand. So we try to work with you to make that as smooth as possible in terms of transitioning, help manage tasks, automate logistics on the ground as a trusted partner here in New Zealand. And it's really tailored support from the locals to help get you down here. And how we work is we break that up into two phases. You've got your pre-arrival during transition. So we, as Bill was just mentioning, we co-design with you a bit of a recce to get down here and check it out, see if it's actually for you. We have great access to some incredible private residences that we use in the tourism point of view, off-market rental properties that we fully service and deck out with chefs and make it your home away from home, so you can really get immersed in that local spot that you're choosing to settle and get a feel for whether it is actually for you. And then, of course, a bit of coordination around those professional services. And then once you arrive, once you've gone through that process and decided, yeah, this is for us, and you work through the paperwork, we can assist in setting up that lifestyle, working on vehicles, logistics, your aircraft aviation, anything you need. We in the team can help bring that to life for you. School, working with getting your kids or dependents enrolled into the right schools, and how that works, and run you through that process, walk you through that process. And one thing that we really get a lot of discussion about is around a concept we kind of call lifestyle matching. So through our backgrounds, and New Zealand is quite a connected country. So it's really important to try and connect into that, those few degrees of separation. And we help make introductions to clubs, things that might be of interest, activities, local networks and arts and culture, or perhaps that's activities like getting out on your mountain bike or going hiking, just to help immerse you in your local community and give a really rapid integration into your new spot. Our team's on call 24/7 to help get you and your family out here and exploring those hot spots, as well as assisting friends and family if they want to come out and visit, and of course organising anything you need on the ground to get back to the States, whatever that might be. I'll just pass it over to Phil for a few seconds to wrap up the webinar.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, so in essence, our mission is to, I guess, to be the sort of trusted people on the ground here in New Zealand, to, I guess, to showcase everything about New Zealand in terms of lifestyle and what it is like to live down here. And, with some people, they might find it is not for everybody, but I guess at the very least and again, we're biased, but so many people just find it is one of the most extraordinary places they have ever visited. And we just hope that we are able to showcase, our little kind of slice of paradise down here, down in the South Pacific in the best way we can, and put you introduce you to the right people, to the right networks, and introduce you to the right opportunities. So thanks everybody for your time, and I think we are handing it back to Whit, I believe. Yeah, he was there and now he's not. There he is.
Yeah, thank you guys. I appreciate it. We could probably put up, there it is, all the contact information. We have a few minutes left. I appreciate all the speakers' times. We have a few minutes left to answer some last minute Q&A through the Q&A chat, but also, we will be circulating all the speakers' contact information as well as a recording of the video after this if you registered. So for a handful of questions around tax, and I just want to highlight that we do not have, mostly due to the nuance of the global nature of taxes, cross-border implications of taxes, we don't have a tax professional on here. They're quite unique to everybody's circumstances, particularly in the States. So there were a lot of questions around taxes and structure. So I would just say that, from the U.S. side, anybody at Whittier can point you in the right direction for consultation from a U.S. tax professional. And on the New Zealand side, I'm sure any of our speakers could put you in contact with, tax professionals specifically within New Zealand. But the U.S. Particularly is a global wealth tax, meaning as long as your assets are, as long as you maintain a U.S. citizenship, your assets are taxed internationally, no matter where you're domiciled or where you may have residency. So, there may be some nuances with offshore trusts and things like that, but it would take some careful tax planning. So I won't pass those questions on. I did get 2 questions that I think would probably be in Tom and Ben's court potentially, or the other group. One was, what is the definition of family member as it relates to the residency program investment visa? How do you define family member?
Sure, I can probably answer that one. So basically, a family member refers to either a partner, so that could be a husband, wife, or domestic partner, and children under the age of 25 who are reliant on their parents. So that means that they're single, that they're financially reliant on their parent, and that they don't have any children of their own. So that's what we mean when we say you can include family members, essentially partners and children.
Got it. Perfect. And then I guess second, another unrelated question. So one of our attendees asked, what is motivating New Zealand for opening up its, sort of program more broadly when maybe other countries are sort of limiting or closing down their programs? Any insight into, sort of policy around why New Zealand is sort of opening up its program at this time? Thoughts? I mean, I heard
that one.
I think you can answer that one. I think in part it's we're very supportive of having interesting people come to New Zealand and support our economy, particularly in the growth part of our economy. And you can see that through the way in which the investment visa has been structured. There's very much a bias towards capital going into that growth category, which is where all of the early staged or private equity managed funds are. We, as a country, are interested in having capital to come and support our early stage businesses, but also very interested in having people from different locations come and integrate themselves in our society and learn from them and their expertise in whichever field they have had successes in. So certainly looking to just broaden our economy would be my view, but that's a personal view, not an official one.
All right. I don't see any additional questions. I'm sure I missed some, and I'm sure there will be more questions post this meeting. So I'm glad we'll be circulating the contact information that's on the screen here. I would like to thank all the speakers and all the attendees for joining today. Having been to New Zealand and spent time there, I can attest to all of the positive things that were shared by these speakers today. Whether it's the climate, the friendliness of the culture, particularly as it relates towards Americans. I think there's a very good partnership that New Zealand appreciates with the States, and so I think that partnership is strong, and we're great allies in many ways, and I just think it shows when you're there. There's a very nonpartisan culture that I found there, where it was just very open and friendly, and I think that's welcoming when you're going to think about spending time somewhere, and obviously all the other positives. So again, thank you guys. I want to try to stay on schedule here. Very grateful for the attendees and the speakers, and we look forward to reaching out. So thanks so much. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Cheers, guys.